Hey guys, Josh Collacchi here with rotocurve.com, and we're here to discuss today's pitching segment. Of course, we'll always go over like what we did yesterday and talk about how the day of pitching went. And yesterday was a great one. Saw guys like Zach Greinke, King Felix Hernandez, and Jose Fernandez. They were all incredible. All three of them were top three options, and a lot of people had a lot of them, and they were rewarded. Zach Greinke had a one-hit shutout through 8 innings and got the win. Felix Hernandez got the win and pitched 7 strong, and Jose Fernandez continues his dominance at Marlins Park with another gem with, I believe, 8 strikeouts and 7 innings of work. So those 3 guys are definitely guys to keep an eye on for the remainder of their for the remainder of the season, definitely before the All-Star break. This was their last start, but right after the All-Star break, look for them to pick up where they left off. And it might be the last time we see Jose Fernandez with a price of under $10,000 on either site. So if you took advantage of that last night, good for you. The other guys we mentioned yesterday were Jeff Locke and Cody Anderson, and both of them were very cheap options, and they pitched well. Locke gave up 4 runs, but only 1 was earned because of an error that was made by the Pirates in the middle of that game. And he was removed a little bit too early because they needed a pinch hitter and they needed somebody to score some runs because Carlos Martinez shut the Pirates down yesterday. The other guy we just mentioned was Cody Anderson, who did pitch very well. He was removed after, I believe, 79 pitches, which was a little bit alarming, but they felt that he did his work in the game and he did pitch well and was able to get, I believe, 10 fantasy points on DraftKings and close to the high teens or 20 or vice versa on FanDuel. So today we got to get into it because there's a lot to talk about and there's a lot to filter through because we have 14 games today. There is one early game that starts at 4, but we're here to discuss just the late slate. There are some aces that throw, and that's Madison Bumgarner against the Phillies, Cole Hamels against the Giants, Lance Lynn against the Pirates, Garrett Cole also throws against the Cardinals, and then the last guy is Danny Salazar against the A's. Now, normally all 5 of these guys would be great guys to roster, but I like to look at a lot of matchups, and those 5 guys don't necessarily have great matchups today. We talked about Bumgarner against the Phillies. He probably has the best matchup on paper because the Phillies do have a terrible offense in the gist of things, but you have to think about how they're doing against left-handed pitching. They're actually hitting it pretty well. They're hitting over 260. They don't strike out too much as a team, but Madison Bumgarner is still one of the better left-handed pitchers in the game and could be considered against the Phillies team that is probably going to lose tonight, giving Bumgarner the win and some bonus points. On the other side is Cole Hamels. Now, this is a big thing today because Hamels is pitching for probably the worst team in baseball. Record says definitely. But the fact is that he faces a Giants team that on paper has struggled so far against lefties as opposed to right-handed pitchers. But they got Hunter Pence back. They have Buster Posey still. They have some good right-handed hitters and some good left-handed hitters in that lineup as well. So I could probably will be staying away from Hamels today against the Giants simply because he doesn't have that upside of a win pitching against Madison Bumgarner unless something crazy happens. But it's just too much for me to spend on a guy that doesn't have a great matchup. Now, the other guys I talked about, Garrett Cole against the Cardinals. The Cardinals always struggle against lefties, but Cole's right-handed, and they do hit right-handed pitching very well. The other guy is Salazar against Oakland. Oakland doesn't strike out too much. Of the top-priced pitchers, the only guy I really like a lot, other than Bumgarner, is Lance Lynn against the Pirates. My only issue with Lynn is he's priced with the big boys. He's priced with Hamels and Bumgarner, and I'm not sure I can justify paying a price for Lynn when you can get another guy like that at a different price. Now, of those guys, like I just said, I like Bumgarner and maybe some Lynn, but I'm probably going to save some money and pick some cheaper pitchers. And I want to talk about those guys right now because there's a few of them that might maybe go overlooked with some of the aces that are pitching today. The first guy I want to talk about is Chase Anderson, and the reason why is simply because of the matchups. I break down each day. I try to update something on RotoCurve that's called our MLB team stats for starting pitching, how those opposing offenses hit against certain sides of the mound for right-handed pitchers and left-handed pitchers. And I use a variety of other numbers that include batting average, slugging percentage, OPS, a whole bunch of things of that nature. There's only 4 pitchers that reach my matchup threshold today, and Chase Anderson's one of them. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Anderson as a pitcher because he has struggled of late. He doesn't have great stuff. But he's facing the Mets, who just have a woeful offense. I believe they're hitting just 230 against right-handed pitching. They have a WOBA of under 300. It's a 285. And they're striking out a lot more of late as well. Their strikeout rate has risen to 21%, and that gives Anderson a great matchup. That being said, even with a great matchup, sometimes the pitcher isn't as great of an option. And I think that may be the case for Anderson here today, but I will probably be throwing him into a few cheap GPPs just because he does have that top matchup, and there's been definitely a high correlation between matchups and pitcher success. He pitches in Citi Field, which is the most pitcher-friendly park. And it's a little bit different because he pitches his home games in one of the most hitter-friendly parks in baseball, so that also gives him an edge. But the guy I really like today, and I'll tell you a few reasons why, is Collin McHugh against the Tampa Bay Rays. The Rays, I think, have the worst offense in baseball against right-handed pitching, simply because they're down there with the bottom-of-the-barrel National League teams in terms of numbers, but they get to use a DH. They have that extra hitter, and my personal opinion is they have an extra 2 hitters because, like I've said in the past, National League 8 hitters usually don't see many pitches, and they're not going to get a chance to hit the ball very hard either with the pitcher batting behind them. So although the Rays do have 9 position players that hit, they're not hitting the ball well against righties, and that gives McHugh a great matchup. They have a very high strikeout rate of over 22% against right-handed pitching, and they're hitting just .238 as a team. That's what I just mentioned, talking about how bad their offense has been against righties so far. Now, one reason why I like McHugh is he has one of the better 12-6 curveballs in the game. For those of you not familiar, just look at the face of a clock. With a 12 and a 6, it means the guy has a lot of movement downhill with his curveball. And McHugh has one of the better ones in baseball, and that gives him the ability to strike out a lot of hitters. Now, if you look at his ERA, it's a little bit skewed because it's close to 4, and he struggles a lot in the first 3 innings of the game. And that brings me to a point that I wanted to teach you guys about today is you have to look at different things with pitchers and why they struggle in certain spots and why they struggle or more successful in other spots. And this is some things that I dug up about McHugh today. He has a 5.82 ERA in the first 3 innings, but after that he has just a 3.3. That's a massive drop-off. Now, that could mean one reason or the other. It means he's not getting settled in. Maybe he's not commanding his fastball well. But for me personally, watching a few of his starts, he tends to throw his off-speed and secondary pitches a lot more later in the games, and that's why I think he's been so successful. Now, he's given up 3 or 4 earned runs in the first couple innings before and then cruised after that. But that's one reason why I like him against the Rays today, because I found that the Rays are one of the worst teams in baseball in those first 3 innings. They're hitting just .220 in innings 1 through 3, and that directly combats the weakness of Collin McHugh. And it could be a perfect storm for him today because he has that great curveball. He's facing the Tampa Bay Rays team that struggles mightily against right-handed pitching. And his biggest weakness is one of the Rays' weaknesses as well. So you can see McHugh pitch a great game, and he is priced a little bit higher than I'd like him to be, but he has a cheaper price than some of the top-tier studs. And it gives you the ability to be a little bit contrarian whether you use him in cash games or tournaments. He's my top tournament guy for today, but there's one other tournament guy I wanted to mention, and that's the guy pitching on the other side of the field, the Collin McHugh, and that's right-handed pitcher Erasmo Ramirez. Now, you've heard Benny and Rap discuss, and we've all discussed the term gas can here on Roto Curve, and that talks about pitchers that give up a lot of home runs and a lot of hits. That's what Erasmo used to be, but for some reason, not anymore. He's pitched very well of late. He's given him just 5 earned runs in his last 7 appearances over a span of 38 innings of work, and he has 32 strikeouts in 38 innings. Now, what has changed? I think personally it's his changeup, which is honestly one of the better pitches in baseball. Now, it sounds weird because a guy that has struggled for most of his career all of a sudden has a big turning point, and it's because of one pitch. You have to watch that pitch and how he throws it. He uses it to righties and lefties, which is different for a guy that throws a changeup because most of the time they usually throw that changeup to one side or the other side of the plate. Left-handed pitcher will throw a changeup to a righty, and a righty like Erasmo will throw it to lefties. Now, that's a big thing for him because he's facing the Astros, who have a lot of left-handed and right-handed hitters. So he'll be able to use that changeup and try to strike out a whole bunch of Astros hitters. And that's a big thing because you've heard me talk about before, the Astros strike out the most in baseball. So for a contrarian approach in terms of going for a starting pitcher in tournaments, I do like Erasmo Ramirez today, who will be very low owned. And he doesn't have a great matchup, but he has a very good pitch to neutralize those Houston Astros bats. Those are my thoughts on pitching today, so be sure to keep an eye on the Roto Curve lineups page that will be coming out later in the day. Check and see if any of those lineups change. That might change your thoughts on the pitching for today. And as always, in the middle of the summer, make sure to check on that weather. Danielle will have her update on the Roto Curve DFS weather part on the site later on today, so be sure to stay tuned for that. And be sure to check out the rest of the tools on Roto Curve. There's a lot of things that I try to update at least once or twice a week, along with the different tools for umpires and all kind of other statistics. So be sure to use everything at your disposal, and good luck tonight, and have a great weekend.